Hello and welcome everybody to Murder Mavens, a true crime podcast. My name is Lynn. I am captive to the Karen Reed retrial. I've been watching it every day so far, and today was day 7. I have to admit, as I was watching the trial today, I was a little bit distracted. So normally I have the trial on in the background as I work, and I mostly listen, but then when I catch a spot that might seem like interesting or that kind of piqued my ears a little bit, I'll go back and sort of rewatch a little bit. But today was a very distracting day. I'll tell you a little bit about my day at the end. But day 7 starts off with Jennifer McCabe back on the stand. And I think she started her direct examination was maybe halfway through yesterday. And so she was back on the stand this morning and for her direct examination. And a couple of things kind of jumped out at me with her testimony, both today and yesterday. So I feel like she's really underscoring the I did it. And multiple times now she has said that Karen Reed was like so frantic and hysterical, and she was saying things in threes. Like that Karen Reed was always like repeating herself in threes. So she would be like calling out Jen's names like Jen, or Carrie, like, and I think she's just trying to like reiterate it as many times as possible so that it sticks, because I think this trial is going to be kind of long if it's anything like last time. And people tend to not remember things unless they see it multiple times, they hear it multiple times. And so Jennifer McCabe, by her continuing to like emphasize and say that it becomes like a refrain, right? It's kind of like the chorus of a song. It has a catchy tune, but it's memorable because that's the part that gets repeated multiple times. And so it kind of feels like they keep on underscoring that. The other thing that I thought was a little bit interesting, I don't know, it hasn't come up in cross-examination yet, but Jennifer McCabe was asked by Hank Brennan, Hank asks her, what was your state of mind when you called or as you were calling 911? And Jen McCabe said that, quote, I did write this in my notes, quote, my heart was racing. And Here's the thing that I'm a little bit curious about, because um, I know this because I watch pretrial motions, so the jury will not know that the prosecution intends to bring in, I believe, heart data information, because they are saying that their argument as to why this information is relevant is that if the defense plans on putting on a third-party culprit defense, meaning somebody else did it, and they're going to make, not like accusations or whatever, but if they're going to suggest third parties did it, and one of the third parties that they might try to suggest or, put enough information out there so that the jury can infer if Jennifer McCabe might have some involvement in what happened to John O'Keefe, then they want to be able to rebut that information with heart data that I think her phone, I think she has an Apple Watch or something like that. So I guess because it's on her, maybe it can monitor her heart or something like that. Because there's this whole Apple Life thing, and they're very on various people's phones and things like that. And so so that has come up a couple times now. We don't know why it's relevant. In this trial, Hank Brennan did ask something early on about how she was feeling, or something to suggest that the heart data might come in later. And this was another moment where he's asking not about her heart rate or anything explicitly, but she offered the information. So it makes me wonder if she kind of knows that this information might come in somehow. What I am assuming is that the heart data, whatever this heart data is, wherever it's coming from, my guess is that Hank Brennan wants to use it because it is I mean, I'm not sure how accurate it's going to be, but my guess is that he feels like he can use it because it's good for him, which means that I'm guessing it shows that Jennifer McCabe was had a normal heart rate when she was woken up in the morning by Karen Reed, and had a normal heart rate around 12:30, or throughout the early morning hours, when it's presumed that perhaps John O'Keefe passed away. And so it's not indicative of a heart rate of somebody who's committing or covering up a crime. Which I don't know how you have scientific data that what does somebody's heart rate look like when they're when they're committing a crime. But it'll be interesting to see if it comes in for one, because I don't believe, if I remember the pretrial motions correctly, I don't think he's planning on bringing it into his case in chief. But I think he was saying that he wants the defense to be aware that he has the data, and that it might come in if they are going to go down certain roads of questioning, and they might use it as rebuttal evidence. But it's definitely coming in, and I don't remember just subtly, her heart rate, and if she was feeling tense or anxiety and things like that. And so it'll be interesting to see, because she made the statement, "My heart was racing." I wonder if there's going to be, because she said my heart was racing at the time that she called 911. But if you listen to the 911 call, she doesn't really sound super anxious or scared or worried, or she doesn't sound like like a person who's like really, heart racing and, worried and scared and, all of the things. And so it'll be interesting to see if her heart data actually maps to that. So I've been waiting to see if on cross any of that comes in, but maybe if her heart rate is contradicted by that data, they still might not want to bring it in, but I guess we'll see. I don't know if she brought it in intentionally, because certainly her lawyers are not supposed to coach her as to what to say. So I doubt her lawyers told her to say it, but I wonder if she's aware of the strategy. So we'll see. The other thing that I don't remember this, but that it could just be because I don't remember it from the first trial, but she's sad that Karen and Carrie were starting to do like CPR mouth to mouth and on John O'Keefe, and they at one point wanted to turn his body over for one reason or another. I can't remember what the reason was. But she said that after they started to move him, that he was bleeding somewhere on his face. So that would suggest that if he was bleeding, I'm not sure why this. I guess it's a good thing that it came up just to show that they're not hiding anything. But I feel like, wouldn't that suggest that he wasn't dead, and that he probably had not been there since like 12:30 a.m. Because remember that at the time that they found him, it was something like 6 a.m. And the prosecution is alleging that Karen Reed backed into him at 12:30, like midnight, just past midnight. And so, Karen thought he might choke if he wasn't turned over. Okay, thanks, Edith. Yeah, I didn't remember. But yeah. But see, but choke on what? So, I mean, wouldn't that suggest that maybe she thought he was still breathing and that, I don't know. But the fact that if he was bleeding, and Jennifer McCabe said that he started, and I think Carrie Roberts said that he started bleeding too, when they started to move him, then that would mean that he was still alive and probably not, hadn't been there overnight for like 5 hours in the snow. And I know there was a lot of discussion about, well, when they turned him over, was there snow under him or not? Because, the snow hadn't really started to come down until early that morning. And so, so there's a little bit of debate about that as well. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Karen was running around in a panic and felt hopeless. She wanted to do something. Yeah, I could see that, like just not knowing what to do, and that was probably the only thing she could think of. And so one of the things that I noticed just from having watched the first trial and comparing this to the first trial, Jennifer McCabe definitely seems more likable. The other thing that I noticed is that just like in Karen Reed's case, and I'm not, saying this is a bad thing, but I think that I can't remember if this came out. It must have, but I just must not have remembered. But I didn't know that Jennifer McCabe, oh yeah, this did come out in the first trial, that Jennifer McCabe also had MS, multiple sclerosis, and Karen Reed has it too. And that's one of the things that sort of they bonded over, the fact that they're both, in their 40s and, were diagnosed with MS so young. But the reason why it's, I think the reason why Jennifer McCabe is making sure to mention it, because she's mentioned it kind of a few times now during her testimony, just as like a side, note or whatever, or she'll put something in context of her MS. And so, for example, she'll say that she said something like, when Karen Reed asked her to Google how long to die in cold, she made it a point to mention that because of her MS, her extremities get really kind of rigid or whatever. And so that's why her fine motor skills for, typing in the search, because there were typos and it's like infamous. It's her search was Hos long, HOS instead of how long. And so so the reason I think that both she and Karen Reed are making sure that, I guess, people know that they have MS is because it can affect like your motor skills and how you present and maybe even how you kind of carry yourself a little bit. And so they might seem like a little bit more stiff or a little bit more rigid, and I think it's to help explain why, and usually those are characteristics that make somebody not seem so likable. And so I think it's to maybe like explain a little bit why, if you're finding something about her and you can't really put your finger on like why maybe you're finding her unlikable, it might be the MS, that it just has an effect on her physicality. Which, to be honest, we shouldn't hold that against people, their physicality and stuff like that. But we're also human. So like there are things that we might see and it's just like, human nature to get like a read on people, so to speak, like get just like a sense of whether this is somebody who we think might be honest or not. And I kind of find, and if you're watching, let me know in the live chat or let me know in the comments, does she seem likable to you? Because I kind of feel like she seemed a lot more likable this time around, especially in comparison to last time. So then Alan Jackson handled the cross-examination, and it's funny. He starts with, so I think this is a good refrain for him, like a good thread that he's making sure to underscore where he can, which is the fact that he asked, when was the last time you and Carrie Roberts spoke? Because I think that he's really beating on this drum that they're trying to get their stories straight, that they're trying to make sure that and they're not supposed to be talking about the trial, but that they're doing so anyways, and so she answers, Jen McCabe answers that Carrie called her last night. So and he's asking that question not knowing the answer too, just having a high suspicion that the two are in really tight, close communication with each other. And it paid off because sure enough, they talked the evening before Jen McCabe is to resume and take the stand again. And that was true when Carrie Roberts took the stand as well. Jen called her. And like I said then, it could be a friend just lending some support, and saying good luck and whatnot, hope it goes well. Or it could be them possibly getting their stories straight and debriefing a little bit on how the day went, etc. So there was a little bit of discussion about who she's talked to, how many times she has talked to law enforcement. One of the things, and I cannot remember if this happened on the first time either, but one of the things that Alan Jackson went through, and I wonder if he's doing it this time, because last time when Lolly, the prosecutor for the first case, when he put everybody on the stand, he actually went through the whole like family tree, and so it was kind of clear who was who and how everybody was connected. And I'm wondering if Alan Jackson felt like he needed to do that this time because it hasn't been done so far. It was so boring the first trial because there was a lot of who's who is has family connections and where are all the family relations and things like that. And so this time, since the prosecution didn't offer that information, Alan Jackson made sure to go through how she's connected to everybody, which I think was important. I think that was good because it shows her relationship to everybody. And then one of the things that they are still underscoring this time around, because it was a theme from the first trial too, is that the people involved are very interconnected, either through family relations or in-laws or strong, long family friends and friendships like that. Whereas Karen Reed, a little bit of an outsider, not really part of the friend group. And so he's trying to really, I think he really emphasized that this is a close family. It's because every family dynamic is different, right? So there's a difference between a family that don't get along, and family that spend holidays together, see each other often, live in close proximity to each other, celebrate big milestones together, and that would lead one to kind of assume that if something happens, they close up and they protect their own, So Edith says, what's interesting is how the video of the police car and the statements of events match. If they lied, there would be glaring errors. Yeah. Even to the light turning on in the house. Yeah, I mean, have you noticed yet, Edith, if there are any discrepancies? Because the interesting thing is that they are playing the videos from the dash cam, and both sides are referring to it and playing it in clips. But we're kind of relying on the witnesses telling us like who's who in those videos, because it's really hard to tell who's who. I can't really uniquely identify who's Karen, who's, I can just see that somebody's going this way and somebody's going that way, and there's two people here and one person there, and that's about it. It's really hard to tell like what exactly is happening, well, or who exactly is whom. And it's worse with the restaurant, the bar camera security footage too. That's super blurry. I had a very hard time seeing what was happening there. But I didn't look for whether I didn't look at the house though. Are you able to see the house at all in some of that footage? I haven't been looking. I'm gonna have to take a closer look. So I did think that it was good that Alan Jackson kind of tried to underscore like how connected this family is, how the Albert family has a lot of people who are in position of authority and influence. So the city selectman being Chris Albert, who is Brian Albert's brother, and then Brian Albert himself being a police officer, although he's a Boston cop, not a Canton police officer. But Kevin Albert, another brother of Brian's, is a Canton, I think, detective or something like that. And so the three brothers are in law enforcement and, positions of authority. And so there's, and And then there's Brian Higgins, who is also, he was a federal agent. I think he's an was he ATF or something like that? I think he might be. So yeah, I mean, they've definitely got, and a long history also in the community. Like they've lived there a really long time. So for generations, that is. So, then the thing that I think is becoming very common with Alan Jackson's style of cross is that he's trying to impeach every witness using their prior testimony. And I think the testimony that he's comparing back to the most is in the grand jury, which I think would have been the very first time that these folks will have testified under oath as to the facts of the event. Because I'm not a lawyer, so I could be wrong, but I think you have to do the grand jury first, and a grand jury has to actually decide that there's enough evidence to proceed with, an indictment or an arrest or further like subpoenas and things like that. And so she has testified in a grand jury, and apparently lots of her testimony back then, which would have been closer in time to the actual events that occurred, she made no mention of a lot of the things that now are great facts for the prosecution against Karen Read. The big thing being that she never said in that grand jury testimony that Karen said, I hit him. I hit him. So that seems like that would be a really key bit of information that she keeps saying is as clear today as it was. I mean, she literally on the stand today just said, the fact that Karen Read said, I hit him is as clear in my memory today as it was however long ago it was that it happened. And yet she didn't say it in the grand jury when she testified in front of the grand jury, which would have been like the first time she testified to these facts. So I think that's a big deal. Now, I do feel like Jen McCabe this time around under cross-examination, because she was cross-examined during the first trial, also by Alan Jackson, and they were very hostile towards one another. She was very... and I think in large part, this is when she came off to be very unlikable. She was very squirrely. She didn't seem like she wanted to answer anything, and she wasn't the only one. Pretty much all of the witnesses for the prosecution were very helpful and very answering all the questions with all the details during direct examination. But when it came to cross-examination, all of a sudden they have all these holes in their memories and they can't remember, because that's the thing that you are, I don't want to say coached, but you kind of are, you're prepped for trial to say, if you don't know one way or another, just say that you don't remember, because no one can prove whether you remember something or not. So if you just say, not to my recollection, or I don't remember, that's your out. And then you cannot be impeached by saying yes or no. If you can't give a definitive answer, you just say you don't remember. And then they can't impeach you if later you say something else, or in the past you said something else. And so it's valid, I think, for people to prepare, coach their witnesses in that way. They can't coach and tell them what to say in terms of the facts of the case and whatnot. But that is the other thing that actually Alan Jackson went into a little bit, is whether or not she had been coached as to her like demeanor and how to comport herself on the stand and whatnot, which I don't really know the point of going into that. Because I think he kind of was trying to show that maybe he was trying to show that like a little bit of her demeanor was an act, possibly. Because he went into this line of questioning of, did part of your like discussions with the prosecution involve your demeanor on the stand, and did you review your prior testimony, and did that include your I don't want to say attitude, I can't remember which word that he used, but essentially attitude. And I'm wondering if he asked that because he's like surprised by how like composed she is. She's super composed this time around. She seems very chill, very likable. She seems comfortable, which might be because she's been through a trial before, so now this doesn't seem as new to her. And she's even comfortable under cross-examination. And I feel like she was being, she's trying to be very cooperative, and she's like, I'm sorry if I can't remember. And, she's like literally keeps saying, well, I'm just trying to do my best to remember. I'm just trying to do my best to help. I'm just trying to do my best. I'm sorry this. And like, she's coming off a lot better than she did in the first trial, which seemed very hostile, unlikable, disagreeable. And unfortunately, I think Alan Jackson is starting to look a little bad, because she now, if she was like prepped and coached a little bit, it was effective. She listened, and I think, I don't know how the jury feels, but I think there's a risk that now Alan Jackson looks like he's just like kind of beating up on her, and he's being mean to a perfectly nice person because he's coming at her hard. And the thing is that he's in front of a judge who doesn't like him very much, and so the judge isn't really giving him any ounce of leeway, because he's asking yes or no questions, and she's wanting to go into like story time, and so he cuts her off to try to get her to just say yes or no to his yes or no question, and the judge keeps saying to him, let her answer, which when I've watched other trials, the judge will actually tell the witness, please just answer the question, just answer what's being asked. So kind of feel like, Alan Jackson's not going to get much leeway. And the fact that the judge keeps on having to say, well, would you just let her answer, kind of multiple times, I feel like that's going to leave an impression on the jury that he's like coming in hot and angry, and maybe even a tad hostile towards Jen McCabe, who, she seems like she's just trying to help, because that's what she says. She just says she's just trying to help. But he is trying to like poke some holes in the timeline of events, and, trying to underscore some inconsistencies in her testimony today and her testimony in the past, at the previous trial, and as well in front of the grand jury. It's getting lost a little bit because they're having to go to sidebar a lot. They're having the judge interrupt a lot. So I feel like it's going to resume tomorrow with cross-examination and Alan Jackson. And I kind of feel like he needs to really button it up a little bit and maybe change his tactic, because I don't think he's going to crack. I think he might have been trying to get her like riled up a little bit, but she's staying composed, and I don't think he can use the same tactic with her. He's gonna look bad in front of the jury, and there's still I think a lot of trial left, and I think he needs to maintain like his own credibility with the jury. So that's how I kind of feel like today went. And in general, I think he might have like brought some things to the attention, but then a lot of the snarkiness, he's doing a lot of like side commentary and stuff like that. And the judge is having to tell him to like knock it off. And then when the judge has to actually tell the jury, please disregard what the lawyer, lawyers are not, you're not supposed to take what the lawyer says as facts or evidence in this case. And so when the judge has to kind of essentially like tell the jury, please ignore what Mr. Jackson just said just now, it's not a good look for him. I don't think that helps his credibility. So that was my take. It was just Jen McCabe, and they're not even done. So tomorrow there's no court. I'm not too sure why, but I don't even think there's court with the lawyers. So I won't have a daily recap tomorrow. So that's, but then they are going to have a full day on Friday. And it sounds like they think Jennifer McCabe will take them until lunch maybe. And then there might be another witness to take the stand after lunch. So we'll see how it is. It looks like we got tomorrow off and then back on Friday for a full day. So let me know in the comments what you think of this trial so far, if you're watching it. And I am going to see if I can, do a live recap again on Friday, but if not, I'll do a pre-recorded one. I kind of like having the live one. If folks are popping in, it's nice to just have a little chit chat, see how you guys think it's doing. But we'll see how Friday goes. Today was a little bit of I was very distracted today because woke up this morning, everything seemed fine, started to watch the trial, and then my husband tells me that our neighbor texted him to let us know that my car had been broken into, like the window was smashed, because our car is parked like down the street. And so because we needed to leave the driveway open for some other folks. And so we had to deal with that this morning, which was no fun. And of course, now we have to deal with insurance. So we filed the police report, but now we have to deal with insurance and getting it fixed and all of that jazz. So that I did have that on my mind as I was watching this trial. So I might have missed, some key things, but overall, that's my take on Jen McCabe. And so we'll see what happens as they wrap her up and who they call next on Friday. So until then, thanks everybody and have a good evening. Bye.